Hi everyone, it's Mike Pohatu here, and today I'm going to be running through some of the validation features available in TsGui version 0.9.6.0 and above. Now these features were put in place primarily to allow you to put some controls around your computer names and enforce certain formats within text entry inside of TsGui. So if we open up our package that we download off the website, you'll find this config examples folder, and we want to have a look at the config_validation.xml, and this will give us basically the full set of options available to us. Now this is available for FreeText GUI options and by extension ComputerName GUI options, as computer names are just a pre-configured free text option. So let's just take this whole thing and let's just work through it. So we paste our validation block into our computer name element, GUI option element. If you are doing a free text option, you would just paste this under in a similar way. You may have a bunch of other elements straight below here, but basically it needs to be the next element down in the tree, or the next layer down in the tree. Now most of the stuff in here is actually fairly straightforward. You've got a maximum length the maximum number of characters you can have, the minimum characters you can have. We have the validate empty option, which is similar to what we had before in the free text option. They've just been moved into this validation block for clarity's sake. We'll get back to the message and the group parts in a minute, but I just wanted to come down to these sections. So this is really where the meat of validation configuration is. It's in these two blocks here, the valid block and the invalid block. Now the way this works is they're kind of inverses of each other, obviously. If you set a rule inside the valid block, the text that you enter into the text box will only be valid if one of these rules matches. And we'll get to the rule definition in a second, but essentially just keep in mind that if none of these rules match inside the valid block, that text will be marked as invalid and one that you can continue. Vice versa here, if any of these rules matches in the invalid block, then your text will be marked invalid. So if nothing matches here, then your text is valid. If nothing matches here, your text is invalid. So just wanted to sort of make that clear. This is a must match. This is a must not match. Now, as far as rules go, these are actually pretty self-explanatory generally. You set a rule, the type starts with, so does the text start with whatever we set here? Is it case sensitive or not? And this case sensitive can be set with any of these options. Ends with, contains. The characters one is probably not that useful inside of the valid block, because basically the way the characters will work is if any of these characters are found, this rule will match. In other words, if any of these characters are in your string, that will return that that text is valid. And if you set stuff in here, you're either going to make it crazy restrictive, or it's just going to match pretty much everything. So this is generally not that useful, but it's available if somehow you think it might be useful. The characters one is more useful down in the invalid thing, invalid section, where you would set these characters are not allowed, and obviously we already preset this with a computer name to stop you from entering characters that Windows won't accept for a computer name. So if any of these characters are found, it will be marked as this rule will match, and your text will be marked as invalid. Now, just to be clear, these are OR type things. So if this rule matches, or this rule matches, or this rule matches, or this rule matches, or this rule matches, it will be invalid. There's no way to chain these together into an AND type function. If you want to do that, you really need to look at this regex type or regular expression type. Now I'm not going to run through regular expressions here because you can get into, they can be very complicated basically. But as an example, this particular regular expression says the text entered must start with either WM or WD, and then the following characters can only be numbers, so between 0 and 9, and there needs to be exactly 6 of them. So essentially you need to have a computer name of something along the lines of WM 123456 or WD 123456 or something in that nature. So if you want to build some quite complex logic into your computer names to match exactly your specific naming standards, this is probably going to be the way to go, and it'll give you the control that you want and need. There are quite a few online sites that will help you build these regular expressions, and this is basically how I built this one as well. I went onto an online site, followed some of their instructions and some of their rules, put it into their regular expression tester, and came out with the right result. And again, invalid or valid. The regex one, in my opinion, is probably more useful in the valid section as opposed to the invalid section. Now, what will happen when this processes, and you'll see this in a minute, is that if validation fails, it won't stop on any particular rule. It will go and evaluate the rest of them as well. The reason it does that is it generates a message for you up in the corner that says why the rule failed and all of the rules that caused it to fail. So it gives a bit of feedback to the user. Actually, let's run this up and see what it actually looks like. This probably won't do exactly what we want. Let's get rid of this rule here because it will be too loose. And let's get rid of that rule there. Oh no, that one should be okay because it's not matching this one here. So let's see what this does. Actually, what's happened is, and you can already see what the message thing does, message element does, but we'll turn that off for a minute. Now you can see here that when validation inside of TsGui fails, it will say it must match one of, starts with AB, ends with AB, contains, etc., etc. So these are all the rules that have failed. And basically what that's saying is you must match one of these rules. So it will build a bit of descriptive information for you automatically and display it to the user. Now, if you've used a regular expression, that's probably not particularly useful for a lot of people. Regular expressions are notorious for being not that readable. Very powerful, but not so readable. Now for that, if you're going to use a regular expression, I'd actually recommend setting a custom message for the user, which is what this block here is for, what this element is for. So you can set a custom message to say message blah. And now when our validation fails, it will just say whatever it is you want it to say. So it just gets allows you to be a little bit more descriptive if you've got a specific thing you want to get across to your user. So let's do something fairly straightforward. We don't want any of these rules. All we really want it to do is we want it to match our naming standard, which is defined by this regular expression. And we want to be pedantic, so let's keep it as case sensitive. We don't actually need these two here because they're already configured by default on a computer name option. And we're going to set a custom message that says computer names must start with WM or WD followed by the asset tag. And we'll assume that we've got a 6-digit asset tag. So if we were to run this up now, so computer names must start with WM or WD followed by the asset tag. So here's our nice descriptive message. And now if we come in and type WM 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, now it's valid. Whereas if we try and do this, we can't actually click finish. It won't let us complete. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, finish. And it's set as normal. Now let's see. Now let's say we wanted to just stop someone putting in any numbers into our computer name for some reason. So let's throw back in an invalid block. And we're going to say we don't want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 0. And let's comment out this section. So now our computer name just can't include a number. And our message is still wrong, but so as soon as we add in a number, it becomes invalid. So fairly straightforward to do basic things. The complexity will come if you want to build regular expressions to meet specific requirements. Now, what can happen is you want a slightly different naming standard to apply for slightly different builds. For example, if you have a different naming standard for Windows 7 versus Windows 10, as an example. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can already do this with toggles and groups using the existing methods. So you could actually create a complete clone of this computer name GUI option, add it to a group, and then set the purge inactive equals true option, or attribute, and then have basically have two identical controls that switch on and off, but they have slightly different validation rules set. And that will work. But I thought that would be a little bit clunky, having a whole bunch of basically duplicate XML in your config file. So I've actually made the validation rules group aware, or aware of the groups that you create. So if we see up here, we've got a group set, and we just need to uncomment it. Now what will happen is you can now just create multiple validation blocks, and let's say group 1, group 2, and let's say we want that one to be either A, B, or AC as an example. Actually, let's do Win10. Starts with Win10. And this one will be our Windows 7 one. So now we've got two validation rules on our option. Now we just need to create ourselves a toggle. And we'll use a quick drop-down list, I think. So let's edit that. So let's grab a drop-down list from our groups and toggles example config. And we'll give it a variable name of var_os. We'll give it a label of OS. Our default will be Win10. Group 1 is our Windows 10 option. So we'll make this toggle for group 1. The text will be Windows 10. The value will be Win10. This will be group 2. The text will be Windows 7, and the value will be Win7. So what should happen? We should have a drop-down list. When we select Windows 10, that should activate group 1. When we select Windows 7, that should activate group 2. And let's also clean out our message, because that's going to get confusing. Right, let's see what that looks like. What have we done wrong here? Oh, that's what I've done. I've put that inside of the GUI option. That should be up there. Save. Now we have our drop-down list, and because I've happily named this computer Win10, it's going to work just fine. But if I try and change it to anything else, it doesn't want to work. So we have a starts with validation rule applying when we have this selected. If we then select Windows 7, our validation rule changes or deactivates, and now this rule applies. So there's a way you can change rules according to some other options you've set within the GUI without having to duplicate all your GUI options and have them hide and all that kind of thing. So just one thing to be aware of, if you create validation rules in this way, it will evaluate all of the validation blocks that are active. So if you've got multiple groups active at any given time or multiple groups enabled, it will evaluate this one and this one. So if there's anything that matches as invalid, or anything that would cause your text to be marked as invalid in any one of these active groups, your option will be invalid. So just be aware of that, just to make sure that you know which validation rules are applying in the scenario that you're trying to create. Usually if you keep it nice and simple like we've done here, you shouldn't cause yourself any problems. So that's basically it. If you've got any queries, issues, please get in touch via the 20road.com website. I'd love to see whatever configs you're building and how you're using these tools in production. Thanks very much.